Welcome to Up Your Nerd Cred. Did you used to know everything that was happening in the Marvel and DC universes? Did finding out that some superheroes are from Marvel and some are from DC blow your mind? Has keeping track of everything happening there, and then realizing that we're only talking about comics universes, not cinematic ones, and all the different universes with their own multiversal crises have gotten a little bit out of hand? Well, don't worry. Up Your Nerd Cred is here to talk about the gods cosplaying as men, men cosplaying as gods, and how much the cinematic universes are really leaving out. At the end of each episode, you'll hopefully know a little bit more than you did getting up your nerd cred. I'm your casual nerd host, CiCi. It is so ungodly hot in my house that we've just gone ahead and opened the windows and are just like letting the heat come in because the AC isn't doing anything.
Yeah, meanwhile, here in LA, it's surprisingly comfortable temperature, which is shocking. Anyways, I am your expert nerd host, I am Diaz, who is back in his mutant era of geekdom. Although, let's be honest, did I ever really leave it?
I mean, you didn't. So, what this means, though, is that he ain't new to it. He's true to it. And, I want to remind you, listeners, you can nerd out about all kinds of things, right? We're clarifying the format, but we're not skipping out on it. We're talking about the things that we're nerding out about. It's not just heroes and villains, okay? Do you think that Anne Boleyn actually would have been like a mess on Twitter, or do you think that she might have learned to be more discreet?
Oh, she would have been a mess.
Or do you think Eleanor of Aquitaine sat there and compared the two royal phalluses that she had over the course of her everyday evenings? Or, did the people who actually put pools together and do chemical things know what they're talking about? Or are they just like guessing and there's secret vandals that are coming without video? Who knows? So, AM, what are you nerding out about?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm in my mutant geek era geekdom again. And that is largely because season 2 of X-Men 97 has dropped. The first 3 episodes are, at this point, currently on Disney Plus, and it's, full of time travel shenanigans, character cameos, and Easter eggs, and so far, it's looking good. I am excited with what they've done so far. It will be interesting to see how it progresses, considering the fact that they have changed showrunners and people behind the scenes. So there's a lot of questions about what from the original draft is still there and what they've changed. So, yeah, it's one of those where fingers crossed for a really good season.
I'm really excited for the prospect of actually being able to sit here and binge this because, like my kid's going to be at school. So I actually have an opportunity to sit and watch the show for once as it's coming out versus, seeing it 2 years later after you have been talking about it and pretending that I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, side note, for people who want to watch it in a communal setting, if you are in the LA area, Scum and Villainy is hosting viewing parties again. And if you are in Minneapolis, the Gambit Brewery is also hosting weekly viewing parties. And those ones are being hosted by The Uncanny Experience. So feel free to go check that out.
Ooh, that's exciting. Well, I will say that while you guys have Storm coming over here and basically harnessing the power of the sun and reminding folks that being an Omega is cute, but she's still literally a goddess. It is also funny to see another Earth goddess, shall we say, doing what she's going to do. And by that, I mean Mother Nature has done everything possible to ruin the 250. And you know what? We didn't deserve a birthday anyway, okay? We've been acting up.
Yeah, it's like, I'm really not celebrating the 250. Closest thing I'll celebrate for America is Captain America, because his birthday was on July 4th, so...
Happy birthday, Steve.
Yeah, Steve's the only person who deserves birthday wishes,
Lacey Mosley, though. Lacey Mosley, the scam goddess. She also gets it, too. 4th of July. But,
Side note, about the, what do you call it, 250 event getting like closed out because of the weather.
Mhm.
There's a great video online of a woman dressed up like Storm, and just basically she's just laughing maniacally as she is. And I'm just like,
See?
yeah, that tracks. Storm would do
See?
that just to be petty.
I'm just saying, like, there was all kinds of just, like, absolute mess at, like, the 250. The fact
Yep,
that we both used to think that Dean Cain was, like, an attractive person, like, 30 years ago has really proven that our taste in men has gotten way better.
yep.
Because
To be
him and Dr.
fair,
Oz, ugh.
yeah, to be fair with Dean Cain, we only saw him as Superman back in the day because this was before social media was really a big thing or even a thing. So we did not realize back then how much of a douchebag he is now. So we could be forgiven for not knowing better at the time.
Also, like, high schoolers, all right? They're not known for good judgment anyway. But no,
Yeah.
beyond the fact that, like, it is so ungodly hot, like, the aggressive amount of fireworks meant that there was a whole, smog alert for, like, DC area that had, like, purple air quality alert. All of the thunderstorms and everything at, Mount Rushmore that made it impossible for them to do anything there. I'm just saying, like, nobody's going anywhere in general because it's too hot overall on this side of the town. But, yeah, I
Hmm.
think that, she's a Gaia, the Earth Mother, is, not really a big fan of some of the shenanigans that have been going on. I guess she's doing what she can to be like, "Stop it." So, anyway, we're gonna actually take a quick break real fast because there's a couple of other things that have happened that I want to laugh about, and they're probably not safe for broadcast. And we'll be back to up your nerd cred. Welcome back. So, podcast listeners, I was thinking about how, like, one of the best parts about summer is, well, honestly, I do like the part where it's not this hot, but nice and hot. But it's all the superhero movies that come out, like all of the big, like, budget things where we're sitting there getting all of the spectacle and all of, like, the CGI and the mess and everything else, and decided that I had to sit there and make it a special interest power hour situation. We're gonna sit there and talk about why it is that we expect the summer blockbuster every year, and I'll give you a hint: it has everything to do with that whole thing where they marketed to us. And so now that we're all adults with jobs, we can actually afford to go to these movies that they're making of all the nostalgia things that they hooked us in the first time with. So,
I mean, can we really afford it with the ticket prices these days? There's a reason why the movie industry is having a little bit of problems with that.
yeah,
And streaming services or, movies are like not even staying in theaters that long these days compared to how they used to.
I mean, if they would do something like distribute some of the CEO pay or like some of like the dividends back to like, their staff and stuff like that, that could be useful. But that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about R&D and staff. What we are talking about though from back in the day, the superhero movies and the stuff that we got to see back in the day, n- not quite the event in the same way because we had some really questionable movies that came out. But a lot of
Mm,
it was basically just like we want to sell the toys. The movies are a great way to sell toys on a bigger scale than TV. And,
yeah.
that's what happens, right?
More or less, especially back in the 80s and 90s. These days, they're trying to do the big toy sales, but I don't feel like they quite have the same impact that they used to back when we were kids. Just
Mm,
because, with video games and tablets and everything, toy sales themselves are not as high as they used to be.
fair. Plus, realistically speaking, the Happy Meal toys and meals, or any of like the kids' meal toys, like are not really. We used to have some really cool toys back in the day, like that we'd have, like, but all the tie-ins and everything, right? Like it was absolutely like sitting there, just like making the merch grab fit like a very real thing. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, it also just kind of feels like they don't promote. I'm not sure if it's something with, regulations or something like that, but it does feel like they don't quite promote toys and stuff like that.
yeah, because there definitely used to be a whole thing about like which My Little Pony or GI Joe or something that you would get in the thing. The
Mm,
girl toys and boy toys were serious business back in the day.
oh yeah.
But I mean, let's think about though, like there are some movies though, by the way, that were not embarrassed of what it was that they were doing, and there are some that were embarrassed of what it was that they were doing. And it shows in everything that we got. So that's what I'm saying. Like the fact that we have like the really good movies now, there's a reason for that. So let's start with like some of the movies from I'm not going to say back in the day. It's not a very
The
long
way
time
back
ago.
times.
I'm talking about something that came out in the 1900s, okay? It's not that long ago.
Can we just say the 1980s? But when we say the 1900s, that does make it sound even older.
Yeah, especially since you were already 2 at this point.
Mm.
Yes. Anyway, we're talking about the Care Bears movie. It was released in 1985 and directed by Arne Selznick. So the Care Bears themselves, right? They were actually created for American greetings, right? They're cute little, like they're greeting card characters. It's very cute, right? And they all have all these different like names and like color schemes and stuff like that. And so because they are cute, because this is the kind of thing that like gets passed around a lot, they become plushies. Why? Because this is what we like to do. We like to make plushies. They are so
Hmm.
cute that the plushies are doing so well that they're like, hey, what if we go ahead and make like a TV movie or two, right, to continue moving this stuff along? And then they're like, great, this TV movie has done pretty well. Let's go ahead and make this TV show thing happen. This TV show thing is doing great. What if we go ahead and make this?
A
Wait, no,
theatrical
hang on.
movie.
The theatrical movie came out first. And so they did. And now we
And
have,
then they did a sequel.
there's so much Care Bear stuff, honestly.
Oh, yeah. Side note, the first movie and the second movie, they don't follow the same continuity. The second movie is a reboot.
We don't talk about Bruno like that. They were not super interested in making sure that like we had like a good story for the TV show, stuff like that. They're like, we got a movie and we got a separate movie. And, it's,
Yeah.
I will say that, it is a nice early version of like the kind of social, emotional learning thing that Mr. Rogers like taught the rest of us. But, we'll see what happens from there. But so, I mean, like, it's great because, like, you get the bears and you collect them, right? And it's actually, like, an early form of, like, social emotional learning because, like, they're able to sit there and be like, oh, this is a grumpy bear. Like, I feel grumpy. Or this is, like,
Yeah, help kids identify emotions and stuff like that.
it is more difficult than people think. And a lot of people think that men don't have emotions for some reason.
Yeah, and then they're punching the wall when their sports team loses.
I mean, punching the wall is the nice one. I've seen too many, like, TVs just get completely ruined. Not at my house, just video compilations.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, did you collect Care Bears?
Oh, yeah, I had a few of the stuffies. I remember my favorite was Cheer Bear. She had, like, the rainbow one,
Mhm.
and if in case, any precursors to what I became later in life, you probably had a big hint right
Hmm.
there. I also had, like, the action figure play set, too, of Carolot with, these little, like, plastic versions of the toys.
Ooh.
I think I still
Well,
have that somewhere in my parents' house.
I had one Care Bear.
I mean,
It's okay.
most kids usually had one Care Bear. It's like I had Cheer Bear, and I think my brother had Tenderheart. We didn't have too many of the stuffies. The figures, meanwhile, were relatively affordable back then, I guess.
Mm,
Also, Christmas,
sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, Christmas is really great for getting a bunch of other different games and stuff, though. Not just like those stuffies, but stuff like you have to go play with your sibling or whatever, or to
Mm.
sibling and like your sibling's friends. Like, so for example, did you play Clue when you were younger?
Actually, no. My
You
family didn't
didn't.
have Clue as a kid.
Yeah, I played Clue not at my house, but I played it with at other people's houses, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it's like I didn't play Clue until I was considerably older, and it was one of those I loved because I love a good mystery. But yeah, we never had that one when I was a kid. I was always surprised by that.
And then they said, Clue is so much fun and only causes a little bit of like board flipping. What if we make it into a movie? What if we make it into, honestly, one of the best movies that they put out? Like, right? So again,
Yeah, no, that the movie iconic, amazing cast of characters, very funny and smartly written. Not to mention the multiple endings to kind of match how the game goes.
yeah. So it was released in 1985 and was directed by Jonathan Lynn. So what's great with that, because it's out in 1985, you don't actually get to just like stream it. You don't get to just like have it on home video like 6 weeks after it comes out. If you want to see all of the endings, you're going to have to go 3 times
Mm-hmm.
and hope that you're getting the correct ending.
Well, I mean, was there really a correct ending because of the fact that they had multiple things? Each one was
Okay,
correct, just
then
depending on
just hope that you got a different ending. Let's go with
yeah.
that.
And let's hope you get the ending that you're satisfied with because Flay.
Yeah. So, but we've got the movie. It's based off, the game itself is like Cluedo in the UK. The game was created by Anthony Pratt. You have all of these different endings and stuff that's going there, and it's really it's definitely an interesting way to make sure that people like have to come and spend money.
Really explain the whole premise of Clue because while a lot of us are familiar, some people are not. So
Oh, you know what? You're
Yeah.
right. So let's talk about what the movie is.
Yeah, so Clue essentially is a murder mystery. The entire premise is that the owner of a mansion, Mr. Body, uh,
Boddy. It's not,
yeah,
it doesn't mean anything.
no, not at all, is
Mhm.
found dead. And the players who take on the identity of Mr. White, Miss Scarlet,
Miss
Colonel
Scarlet,
Custard,
Colonel Mustard,
Mustard,
Colonel
thank you.
Mustard, Professor Plum, who was
Yeah,
nasty in the movie, but that's another conversation.
yeah, Mr. Green, and there's like a whole list of characters, and you select them, and you have to like go through the mansion, find clues, and figure out who did what and where. So, like, it was Mr. Green in the observatory with the crowbar or something like that. And then, they adapted that into a movie where, instead of players being part, they cast certain actors to play, I would almost say flanderized versions of the characters.
Also, none of the characters actually wore colors that matched what their color was. So, like, Miss Scarlet wore black, and
Hair.
Miss Scarlet
She
didn't
was
have Scarlet.
she had red hair.
You're right. Either way, you're solving murder through suspects. You're working together. You're doing all of this stuff. And the cash grab of making 3 separate endings, while true to the fact that board game endings are almost never the same, is still a cash grab. Now,
Mhm.
when it's on home video, they have all 3 endings because they could not justify making you buy separate versions of the same thing, Taylor Swift. So, but, I feel like we've been talking a lot about the 80s and shows that we like movies that we got to see like on home video after the fact. So what about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Were you old enough to get to see that one in theaters?
I was the demographic. I was there when the cartoon came out. So of course I was there for the 90s movie.
Yes. Okay, good. Mostly because I was not the demographic that they were going for and not really going to movies at this point. Like I'd already seen like Little Mermaid in theaters and everything, but just not the demographic, so I didn't see it in theaters.
Well, the funny thing is, despite the fact that, everyone considered it a boys' toy line and stuff like that, it really had a huge fan base in girls.
I'm not gonna lie, if I had seen like the original April O'Neil as like set up in the comics where she seemed to be a little bit more ethnic, I might have been more interested.
Yeah. But it was just one of those things where it's like, even not including April, like a lot of girls I remember being very much into, the turtles because despite the fact they were all identified as male, they had personalities that fit for kids of any walk of life, honestly. The smart one, the leadership, the nerdy, the
I got
geeky,
into Turtles 2 later. I got into it later, and honestly, the foot as a whole thing, like I know that they're like a spin-off of what is it, The Hand from Marvelverse.
not a spin-off, a parody.
Parodies, but yeah, there's a whole lot of like the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that is like a lot of like Marvel parodies. So like, that's why they
Yeah.
fight the foot.
Yeah, I mean, the Ninja Turtles origin is literally lifted from Daredevil's origin.
Yeah. Interestingly, they'd use like so there's a lot of Jim Henson's creature shot that they use for the stuff,
Oh, yeah,
and
and the animatronics for that movie were amazing because, especially back in the 90s, you would not have thought they could pull off something that, like, realistic looking, and it flowed so fluidly, with the exception of one particular scene where, and this is something that still horrifies me to this day,
Mhm.
where Donatello laughs and his mouth opens up. But the thing is, it opens up wide enough that you can see the human actor's face and mouth underneath.
It
So
looks
he's
like
got a
he's
mouth
eating
inside his
somebody's
mouth.
eyes.
And it's just
Yeah,
like,
no,
oh God, why?
that part is
Donatello is a
terrifying.
Cthulhian horror.
I was trying not to think about that mess, but yeah, no. So like I saw Ninja Turtles too. Like by that time, I was like more interested in it. But
Yeah. And you
originally
saw the more
1990.
kidified version because the first movie went a lot harder into swearing, into the violence, use of weaponry. And then when they got to the second one, they had to tone all that down because they thought it was too violent for the kids. Keep in mind, these are Ninja Turtles.
I have seen the first one. I just didn't see
Yeah.
it like out in the theaters. And I have to say that my favorite part of it is just that whole thing of just them being like, pizza dudes got 30 seconds. And the dudes like trying to figure out where the hell they are. And they're like, put it in this sewer grate. And the fact that dude just went ahead and did it, they do not pay pizza guys enough.
Now, also, just the realization, that pizza would have been ruined because they slipped it in sideways.
Mm-hmm.
That pizza is going to be like crunch or like falling into the side of the box. And when they open it up later, it's pristine. I'm like, no.
Especially since the New York pizza, those crusts are not designed for
Oh,
like,
there's so much grease. Although they had like, they didn't have good New York pizza. They had like Domino's because they had that tie-in thing for that movie.
it used to be
Hmm.
so cool.
No,
But
the
like, no,
tie-ins in movies were so like insidiously like beat you over the head with it, where you'd have the actors for no apparent reason, and there's a can of Coke facing in the foreground, facing the audience. It's like subtle.
there is a whole Diet Coke Batman commercial that they had before the
Oh, I remember that.
Batman movie. And by that, I mean on the VHS. So
Yeah,
before I would start to watch, like I put it in and I got to the point where like, because, um, I don't know if you know this, but autistic kids will sometimes watch the same thing over and over and over again. And so I
yeah.
got to the point where I was just doing the full, like, just for the taste of it, Diet Coke. But again, you have like these movies and stuff where you're really just taking the whole thing of we have these toys and we want to turn it into something. And I think that this is one that they were not as embarrassed to make this movie. I think that like they were like actually excited to like be a part of this kind of thing and did the
Yeah,
best that they could.
yeah, I think you're right, but it was also like when you look at the behind the scenes aspect of it, apparently it was very low budget in some ways. It's like it was not as big of a blockbuster approach as you would think. I think it was made by an indie film company instead of a
But yeah,
mainstream
no,
one. So it's one of those where it's like I feel like because of the fact they were indie, they weren't like a big major studio at the time. They were more willing to embrace it and have fun with it because, they're not cowing to studio execs saying, "Oh, I don't know if this is marketable enough." Even though the Turtles had already been like a cash grab of media with the cartoon series that had already come out at the time.
I'm sure there were a whole lot of little kids in my year that I just don't remember doing a whole lot of like ha and a hi yeah. But now I sound
Hmm.
like Bartok, so
Yeah. Although interesting enough, when the first movies came out, they did not create a toy line for the movies. The only toys that were on the market were the cartoon toys.
that's weird. Maybe it's
Yeah, it's
because
like
they
they
couldn't figure out how to make the animatronics look like actual like turtle toys.
well, that's the thing. It's like later for the third or second and third movie, they made action figures for those. But the first movie, oddly enough, even though it was like a toy franchise that was turned into a TV series, they didn't make toys for the first film, and I always thought that was kind of weird.
You know what? Like, I think the fact that they have like more toys for like 2 and 3 and like the cash grab of it all is like, not gonna lie, because one was definitely a much stronger, grittier story than like
Yeah,
2 and 3
it,
are.
it leans a little bit more into the original comic books in some ways.
So, but again, like that really is just like kind of emphasizing the part where like they're not ashamed of stuff and like they're not doing as much for a cash grab and it's a substantively better movie than the ones that you can see the I just want your money of it all.
Yeah, interesting thing with the Turtles was when they made the transition from the first movie to the second movie, they played a bit more into the cartoony aspects. The Turtles felt kind of more in line with the animated series, with the exception of Raph. He was still kind of like the hard ass character in the group.
Well, I
But they
mean,
tried to make it more kid friendly. Like they had a point of view character with Pizza Boy, and they had the brought back the villain from the first film, but he was kind of a bit more funny and stuff like that.
was this the one where we had Splinter being like, I made a funny?
He did that in all the movies.
Okay, cool.
Funny
Cool.
enough, there was the actor who did the voice of Splinter was at a panel recently with a puppet of Splinter and explaining how the I made a funny thing was actually ad-libbed. It was not in the original script. He made a joke and the director decided to keep it into the film, and then suddenly that became Splinter's thing for the rest of the films.
You know what? I will take it. But what I will say is that the ending song of the Go Ninja Go thing that Vanilla Ice did,
Yes.
I thought it was fun back in the day.
Everybody thought it was fun.
We didn't know
But
what kind of person he would be in
like I
26.
said, anything that happened prior to social media where we actually get to know some of what these people are like behind the scenes, we can be forgiven for because how are we supposed to know?
Yeah, because you and I especially would have been really, really mad at the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers because, yeah, I had like my Kimberly insert and everything that I loved, but what were you people doing to my boy David? Y'all were sitting there making like the Blue Ranger's life hell. And
Oh,
for
yeah.
why? And for why?
Yeah, it's like, honestly, with the stories of what happened to David Yost over the production of Power Rangers, I'm surprised he was the longest lasting member of the original cast. I honestly would have thought that with the amount of homophobia that was aimed at him as a gay man, you know, you got to give him props for sticking with it as long as he did because he loved working on that show so much.
I mean, now I will say there have been plenty of dissections about whether or not it is a good movie. Not everybody agrees that it is a good movie and that, the plot holes that exist are there. They exist.
Yeah.
And also, we could have had Mariska Hargitay as Dulcinea, apparently.
I
So,
know. It's like, yeah, we almost
like,
had her in that role. Also, there's a lot of people who still can't agree whether or not it's in continuity. It is not. It is an alternate universe with the
good to
TV
know.
show.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
no, it's because
it
the
was directed
origin
by
for
Brian Spicer.
well, it's like also just the origin of their powers and everything in the movie are retold in the TV series completely different. So it's one of those things where nothing fits with it. So
I will say that one of the things that is really fun is the whole villain Ivan Ooze.
yeah,
That one, there's a certain amount of that villain who I feel like he's just designed for them to like sell toys. That one, more than anyone, is designed to like create toys because like they
yeah,
had a
but interesting.
whole product. Did they not?
Yeah, he got a toy. He did get a toy.
Okay.
They did make a toy for him, but it was just one of those things where I was kind of surprised that they didn't market him more. You know, because like he got one of those large inch figure or like the tall figures. I think I
Hmm.
got like a small one for the silver miniature figures and stuff like that. Because of the fact that he was made for the movie, he couldn't be utilized for the TV show. Not to mention the fact that the villains that they had in the TV show were the ones from the Sentai, and Ivan didn't really fit into that. But it's one of those that he was such an iconic villain. And, for those of who never have seen that movie, because it is,
1995 was
mhm.
obviously 10 years ago. I can
Oh
do
yeah, 10
math.
years ago. But the entire premise is basically it follows the same story as the show. Six teenagers with attitude are picked to be Power Rangers. They save the world. And then one day, the city decides to dig up a giant egg that unleashes a terrible evil, Ivan Ooze, who tries to enslave humanity. And he destroys the Power Ranger powers, and they have to get new powers.
They go to a completely different planet. They go get like a whole new style of powers.
Yeah, and they
You
meet
know,
a scantily clad woman with
named
whistling
Dulcinea.
sticks.
Um,
And they get new powers. They lose their dino powers and start getting animal-themed ninja powers.
Zordon being trapped in that little like tube thing isn't like him just like teleporting his face or whatever. He apparently needs that to live. And Dulcinea also can't leave her planet because her planet is basically that whole tube thing or whatever. But
Yeah, she was basically the sorceress from Masters of the Universe.
okay, but
No,
Daddy,
tell
I
me, it's
love
like
her.
she has magical powers. She turns into a bird, and she can't leave a specific area of the planet. It's like you guys ripped off the sorceress, right?
You know what? Here's the thing that matters. What matters is the fact that Adam was turned into a frog, and I definitely had
I'm
a
a
whole
frog.
thing for Johnny Young Bosch back in the day. So
Yeah,
I definitely watched that movie a lot. And I
same.
did
It
try to
wasn't in
toys, though.
continuity, but I loved it. It was so campy, so silly. Although they did do Kimberly dirty in that one.
They do Kimberly dirty a lot, actually.
Well, the TV show, they let her grow and mature, and she became a leader on the team.
Yeah,
But the
and then what
movie was like,
happened?
I mean,
Then then they sent her off and they had her Dear John Tommy out of
no,
nowhere
no,
to bring
I'm
Cat
talking about
in.
like her development as a character before that point.
Okay, I'm just saying, like, like they did Kimberly
Yeah.
dirty, that's fine, but like,
Well, no, when I'm saying they're doing her dirty, it's like she played a damsel in distress a lot more in that movie than she should have.
that's true. That's
Yeah, it's
true.
like every
That's
five
fair.
minutes, Tommy! Tommy! Lady, you've been a Power Ranger longer than him. You can handle this yourself.
We could sit there and talk about how Tommy sat there and lived his most like Power Ranger life and then came back to it because he just was such a big Power Ranger fan. But you know what else was happening in 1995? We had like a lot of like violent movies coming out in 1995. All of the
And
mothers were
video
concerned
games.
about this. Oh yes, and by that what if we have like a crossover event and we have a violent video game coming out in 1995?
Mm-hmm.
Mortal Kombat! Anyway, so directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, released in 95. Did you, podcast listeners, did you get to actually like play like Mortal Kombat in the cabinets? Like, were you throwing them quarters in? Because listen, I am a certified button masher, okay? That's all I'd be doing. Like, I don't actually know what like combination hits like these kicks and stuff, but
Yeah, no, it's like I had both the game for the Sega Genesis, and I also went to the arcade to play it on the big machine and all that.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, that game was so simple yet so well rendered, where it's just like they looked photorealistic,
Yeah,
but
well,
in
that was a
that
problem during the
video game,
fatalities.
yeah. Well, it's like depends on what level and if you're able to unlock the bloody, because they had a more safe version where they're just getting beaten around, and then they had the bloody version where they're just like, look at this.
Yeah, well, so nobody's skull got pulled and spinal column got pulled out of their body, I think, in the movies. But you got basically it's a whole fighting tournament. So we're
Hmm.
following Liu Kang and Sonya Blade, Johnny Cage, and they're all
And Raiden.
backed up by Raiden, who is the lightning god. He is not Thor. He is Raiden, and like a few other people, Scorpion and Sub-Zero and Goro and the villain Shang
A long
Tsung.
list. And
There's a
Kano,
lot of folks
who
going on there.
was arguably one of my queer awakenings, because that daddy shows up with his robot mask, leaning against a pillar, looking at Sonya Blade. I'm just like, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm into it.
Tell you that his face between Sonya Blade thighs was a very different experience for me,
No,
but
I can imagine.
also the same because it was definitely Sonya Blade's giving him a break that was great for me. But
Yeah, meanwhile, I'm sitting here going like, I wish there were my legs around his neck right now.
the important part is that with like the video game stuff, where like you're constantly like chucking these quarters in.
Yeah.
They absolutely make like the difficulty much more like much more of a problem in like arcades because they want you to keep chucking your quarters in or your tokens and everything.
Mm-hmm. Not to mention, it's like I always
And
felt like the buttons and the controller were not calibrated properly, so that way you would lose and you'd have to pay more money.
yeah, but my theory with this one, I think this is one where like I think the cast was actually excited, and I think that the powers that be were not excited about this because there's a certain amount of embarrassment that like is there enough in it that it was just it wanted to be better. It wanted to be really cool, and I felt like it got held back.
Well, it was like also the problem that some of these properties have is the fact that the original game and stuff like that were not really that deep. They were not really that complex. Like Mortal Kombat is a fighting tournament, and the mythology in it is not super developed in a way with character development. So when they try to adapt it to a movie, they're like, all right, how do we, like, who's the point of view character? Who's this? And how do we justify some of these things? Not to mention
I
the fact
mean,
that they were
Street
still
Fighter
trying to make
worked,
the movie.
right?
I mean, that one's still kind of considered a flop in some ways. It's fun, but it's not considered like one of the great movies of our time, except as a, you know,
In
fans who
Bison
just,
meme generator.
yeah, of
Yeah,
course. But
but
but it's like
Mortal
with
Kombat.
Mortal Kombat, they also had the problem where they weren't allowed to go as hard as I think they wanted to do. Because it's like, if you look at the newer Mortal Kombat movie, it's a bit more violent, it's a bit more graphic. And with the original movie, it always felt a bit more violent than Power Rangers, but not as violent as it could have been and should have been.
Biggest things I liked about Mortal Kombat more than anything was that there were a lot of women in a lot of different outfits, and they were kicking a lot of ass.
Very true. Although that's another movie where I do get annoyed with what they do with the lead female character, because she's such a badass throughout the entire thing, and then suddenly she's a damsel in distress.
Well, you can't sit there and have a movie end where the boy doesn't think that he is like the big important one.
Yeah.
What?
I'm going to be honest, though. When I saw that movie, I like Liu Kang. I thought he was a great character and stuff like that, but Sonya clearly should have been the lead character in that movie. She should
Yeah,
have been
she
the
should
focal
have.
point. Because she was the one who was more actively participating in everything. While Liu Kang was doing the whole hero's journey where he's like slightly reluctant to get involved and all that.
This is
And Johnny was
why
just a himbo.
I'm not gonna lie. if we're talking about groups like that, I think that we probably should have been following Misty more in Pokemon than we were following Ash. Like, Ash is a brand new trainer, but I think that we should have, like, seen a bit more of, like, Misty's background, and by that, I mean, we're talking about Pokemon, all right?
Mhm.
I wanna make sure that we are all on the same page about this, right? And more specifically, again, since we're talking about all these movies that were kind of cash grabs for us, Pokemon, the first movie, which they already know off the rip, they're just, like, going to be continuing to, like, grab all of our money, and I accept this.
Yeah. Oh no, it's like so Anime Expo is this weekend in Los Angeles, and I've got some friends who are there. I did not go because the crowds are insane. The money was too
Mhm,
much, and I'm like, I don't have the mental space for this level of crowded. But
mhm.
one of my friends was there, and his entire focus of purchasing was Pokemon. I don't think we need to really explain the backstory for Pokemon because, unlike some of these franchises, Pokemon is still going hard to this day.
Also, at this point, if you don't know who Mewtwo is and, like, why he was striking back, that means that you don't know who Mew is, which means that you don't actually know any of, like, the original 151, and we're judging you. But, like, this is sitting there, like, going hand on things, like, there's a certain amount of it that I think that Japanese, like, anime movies and stuff like that, they are less embarrassed to be, like, going hard on whatever it is that they're doing. I think that the animation quality was, like, higher than I think, like, the TV series, and that they actually put forth some effort into, like, making, some new mythology and really building on what they previously had.
Yeah, very much so. I completely agree with that. Because you kind of just like with the Pokemon, especially with the first movie. With that one, they didn't try to really retell any origins or anything like that. They did kind of just treat it like you're jumping into the story already. You know who these characters are, and we're just following a slightly more epic version of their adventure. But we do get like a great dark backstory for the villain. He's one of those tragic villain characters. So you
Yeah.
do relate to him, and although I will say this, I'm not sure. I've not watched the original Japanese version of this movie,
Mhm.
but I will say this movie is the most hypocritical movie of all time, where the entire premise of Pokemon is essentially dogfighting. We take animals, we pit them against each other, and have them fight for our entertainment. And then at the climax of this film, where the Pokemon are fighting clones of themselves, we've got the trainers, the ones who take these animals and force them into fighting, saying, fighting is wrong. They shouldn't fight, not like this. And then the spoilers for the movie,
It came out in 1998?
nine
1998,
for the
yes.
States and
For the States, yeah.
1998 and Japan. And it's just one of those where when the movie ends, Mewtwo wipes everyone's memories of the events of this movie. So nobody learned the lesson.
But we did learn as a canon fact, though, that, like, Pokemon tears are healing, so,
Yeah.
like, Rose Quartz, secretly a Pokemon, discuss amongst yourselves.
Yeah, but it's interesting the progression that took, and that was another one that I mean, it started in Japan as a manga and then turned into an anime, and then of course, they marketed toys and all that stuff. But then when it was brought over to the States, it was predominantly set as marketable, so toys, cards, stuff like that. They
Yeah.
adapted the cartoon because it was right there. So it's very similar to what they did with stuff like Transformers back in the day or Voltron. They took an existing property that already had a toy line and just adapted the toy line and adjusted the show for American audiences.
So what I will also note is that taking the toy line and adjusting it for the audiences is definitely it's a thing that they have loved to do, but I'm going to highlight that taking a toy line and adjusting it so that it's like a movie and stuff like that is really interesting. What is interesting is, like, the movies that what they're putting out, right? The ones that are like very like toy line basis. If nothing else, they made a point of like trying to at least create like something out of the story, and like Pokemon, like, like you are a trainer, there's like a whole conceit and everything that you're able to really follow.
Yeah.
But I will say that they don't always learn the lesson of what it is that you're supposed to be doing with these kind of things and why some of these things blow up. And it is because we identify and relate to the story really well. We really like it.
And a lot of these
You
properties
sunk,
already had existing stories to begin with. So Pokemon, Ninja Turtles, we already knew who these characters were, what their narrative was.
you sunk my battleship is not a narrative.
Not remotely.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I
Why
still
did they
remember
try to
seeing
turn
the
that into a
trailer for
movie?
this. Yeah,
What? Like,
because Hasbro was trying to make money off of their properties, and they were already utilizing G.I. Joe, which bombed, was not a
yeah,
great adaptation, and they had, like, I can't remember if this was around the time the My Little Pony Friendship and Magic cartoon was out.
I think so. I think it might have been a
Yeah.
little bit before that because, like, Rise of Cobra came out in 2009, and
Okay.
Battleship was released in 2012, and that was directed by Peter Berg.
Yeah, and then there's the Transformers movie. So Hasbro had a lot of stuff that they were trying to put out there, but they were also trying to utilize the rest of their IPs. So we had Battleship, which, for those who maybe have never played it, Battleship is a game where you put down little
You
battleships on a
you
board,
have a grid,
and
and you can put your ships on, like, you put your ships in different spots on
yeah,
the grid. There are different sizes, and so basically you just guess a bunch of, like, different
yeah, you
grid
try to guess
spots.
where your opponent's ships are, and if you hit them, you put little pegs in the ship until you fill up all the peg holes, and eventually you've sunk their battleship, which was the big, you know, you sunk my battleship motto.
Which is very
And
cool as a game.
yeah, it's a fun game. I played that game with my nephews during the pandemic and stuff like that over Skype. But
But yeah,
yeah, but the thing is, it's not a deep
story,
premise.
yeah. It's like I imagine somebody in the Navy might sit there and be like, this is a little bit messy as a premise, but in general, it's like, oh, the aliens are coming.
That was the absolute weirdest part because the game itself is very much a war story where it's like one group against another group of, like, you know, military Navy fighters. With this, they changed it to aliens who
Yeah.
fired their weapons were giant pegs that would embed themselves in the battleships and then blow them up. And I have to assume the reason they did this was Hasbro did not want to upset the foreign market. So they could not select another country as the villains because they're afraid that it would negatively affect sales. So they did aliens to make it, less
They
likely. Yeah.
they put some names into this, okay? They had Alexander Skarsgård, they had Rihanna, they had Liam Neeson in there.
Yeah. Somebody owed somebody else. Like, the devil came to collect their dues because I think that's the only reason they got any of these actors on. There's no way I
Yeah.
believe a single one of these actors looked at the script and went, "Oh yeah, I have to be a part of this."
Yeah, and that's why and if the actors are embarrassed of it and the team is embarrassed of it, that's how you end up with, like, a movie that nobody wants to see, that nobody wants to be around, that nobody's interested in because nobody believes in it because what is the point?
Yeah. I
So,
mean, I'm willing to bet most of our readers didn't even know a Battleship movie existed.
yeah, that's true. So, honestly, that's probably one of the biggest stains on Rihanna's career. That and the fact that she hasn't released an album since Anti. So, we're actually going to take a quick break to talk about different navies, and we'll be back with our thrilling conclusion. Welcome back to our thrilling conclusion. So, basically, the biggest premise that I think that I've been highlighting with this whole episode is that if you have your studios or your actors or just like your marketing team in general not super interested in the thing, it's going to fall apart. It's going to be a mess. Some of the ones, when you have your crew really excited to be a part of it, you can absolutely see them having them a good time. When people are really getting into the story, you have the wonder that is Clue. When you have the studios who are really willing to throw money at stuff, Michael Bay's Transformers was interesting enough to look at. It was a lot of fun, but again,
Yeah.
still a bit of a cash grab. But
Yeah,
when
we
you
didn't
have
get to Transformers, unfortunately.
yeah, but there's a Michael Bay movie. There's a lot of stuff that gets blown up, and Megan Fox was really done dirty.
100%. I still maintain that she should have been. The thing I'm going to hear from E a lot in these episodes is that the female character usually is a more interesting one and should have been the primary character of the film.
That's what I said about Misty. The important part is that when you have the studios and the people actually excited about what it is that they're putting out, there's definitely a huge quality difference, and you could see just how much more fun it is. And that's why we actually go and see all of the summer blockbusters now. Okay, Robert Downey Jr. was having him a ball as Iron Man. even though that was like some of the bottom of the barrel material for Marvel at the day. And now look, we have the MCU. We have so much MCU because people were just like, let's go and do it.
No,
And
that's
they were excited
that's
about it.
very true. I mean, it's like you look at some of the stuff we talked about. It's like the Ninja Turtles movie. I feel like they had fun with that movie. That was one that they really loved what they jumped into and all that. And then you've got other stuff like the Pokemon movie. That was another one that it was hard. It's a combination of the two. It was created by people who love the franchise in Japan, and
Hmm.
then it was readapted by Americans who probably did not care nearly enough. So it feels a little bit muddled. And then you get the ones that people just didn't give a shit about, like the Battleship movie. Or,
Yeah.
I'm still not sure certain films like G.I. Joe or what do you call it? G.I. Joe in particular were films that they really loved or not. It's
That it was love that was going into like G.I. Joe and Transformers. I think it was an appreciation for blowing
yeah.
things up, you know?
Hasbro in particular, I felt like was trying so hard just to get their IP properties into films. And it works with some things like Transformers, and I'm using that loosely because I hate Michael Bay's Transformer movies in general.
But
But
they were
then there's
pretty viable as cash grab,
eh,
if nothing else.
maybe the first one and second one, but everything else after that was just literally a repeated same story. Up until like the Bumblebee movie where Michael Bay did not have much to do with that one.
They were all still profitable, though, weren't they?
But yeah, they were profitable. I just don't not saying that they were good
Exactly.
profitable.
Cash grab.
Yeah, and then, there's stuff that Hasbro did, like, we didn't talk about it, but like the Gem and the Holograms movie. That was another
Ooh.
one that was created as a toy line and turned into a series. So they had like a rocker girl Barbie-like toy, and they turned into like this weird sci-fi melodrama about cheating partners and rock bands and music, and it was a fever trip of the 80s, essentially. And
Yeah.
then when they adapted it into a live action movie, it was very much like they were ashamed of the property. And they tried to turn it into some like weird Justin Bieber retrospective type thing.
And this is how you end up with stuff like, what do you want? Yellow spandex?
Mm.
So, what we are going to do though is note that we are actually like really excited to talk more about like the movies that have been made, like all the toy movies, and what it is that people are doing with the media. So, as a special treat for you, we have a film producer who's going to be coming and joining us for the next 2 episodes, actually, to talk to us about, to a certain extent, the film studios have learned their lesson or not. So, you know, tune in, be on top of things, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, let's go from there. So, also, as we're moving on to the next point, listeners, I want to remind you that we did have like the whole calendar situation that we did the previous year, and we decided that we were going to change it up this year. So, we have like what I'm calling the You've Got Issues segment, right? Basically, where we're taking a lot of like the personal like comics and books and stuff that we have on our shelves. This isn't just me showing you the yearbook thing that I had before, but this is why it is that, these stories matter in nerd canon, what it is that, other people are thinking about them, how they apply to the rest of the world, things like that. So, AM, tell us, do you got issues?
I've got many issues, but the ones that doesn't require a therapist. So this week I'm talking about Marvels. This was a book series that came out ages ago. It was written by Kirk Busicki. I cannot pronounce his name. Busiek? Busiek?
Busaik?
And
I'm
illustrated by Alex.
apologies to this man. We're
Yes,
so
many
sorry.
apologies. And illustrated by Alex Ross, who is an
Ooh.
amazing artist who does more painted artwork. So
Mm-hmm.
as you can see,
Ross did Kingdom Come, right? I gotta go see if I can find
he
my
did,
copy of
yes.
that.
And this book is a retelling of the basically golden age into roughly the modern age of comics from the perspective of a normal photographer who has
Mm-hmm.
been essentially documenting superheroes since World War II. So as he follows like the first appearances of Captain America and the Human Torch and Namor during World War II and leads further into the Fantastic Four making their appearance, the rise of mutants, the Avengers assembling for the first time. And he's there for like the big moments like Galactus attacking Earth to small moments like meeting with Gwen Stacy shortly before she dies. And
Wow. So, like,
yeah,
the yearbook is one thing, but this is actually like a very like more of a yearbook kind of vibe of just like, we're all in this school
Yeah, because
together
we
almost.
our central focus is this guy and his family. So he is he works for, I believe, the Daily Bugle at some point, and he's a
Hmm.
photographer. So he's constantly taking photos of the events of what are happening in the Marvel universe, and he we kind of follow the ups and downs of his life and how the events of the superheroes affects the normal people, the ones who are living with the fallout.
Hmm.
One of my favorite things, and it actually ties into X-Men 97,
Hmm.
is one day, like during the height of the early days of mutants being more visible and people fearing
Hmm.
them a lot more, he comes home one day and finds out that his two daughters have taken in a mutant who was kicked out of her home. This little girl with obvious mutation, like physical mutation, and you see him trying to process because he knows what he's been told, that mutants are dangerous and evil. But then he's just looking at this little girl with these big black eyes, and she's crying, and she's just saying about like how her parents kicked her out because they blamed her for everything that went wrong with their lives. And he just says softly to his wife and kids, she's just a little girl. And they take her in and just try to be a family to her. But then one day she runs away because she's afraid that she's going to make them a target. And they don't know what happens to her. And it's stuff like that. It's very like emotional, very heartbreaking. And the artwork that Alex Ross does with this is so beautiful, so well done. There's a scene of him meeting with Gwen Stacy before she dies, and Namor is invading New York. And despite all the chaos that's happening, Gwen Stacy is talking about how amazing the world is and how, despite stuff like this, basically there's always something positive to look forward to.
That's true.
Yeah. So basically it's like the kind of view of the world that we really need these days.
Well, on that note, we have in fact come to the end of our podcast, listeners. I know, I know. How is it over so soon? Well, again, don't worry. We already told you you're getting 2 parts with a film producer next week. So, well, not both next week. You're getting like one part one next week and then the week after that, but that's not
Yeah.
important. What's important is the fact that you can always listen to this episode again if that's not fast enough.
And now's the time to mention that we have an Instagram. We're on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and we're working to expand our reach. If you like the episode, make sure you rate, review, subscribe, especially if you're trying to up your nerd cred.
You can follow us across Instagram at Up Your Nerd Cred Pod. If you're looking for me across platforms, I'm at Ciracy Davis, CIRACDAVIS.
And I'm at AM Diaz Art, AMDIAZ ART. And as always, share with me your fan art, your fan fiction, your cosplay. Love to see it all.
Yeah, make sure you send them the good stuff too. Don't be shy.
And if you have burning questions that you want us to discuss so you can up your nerd cred, make sure to like and subscribe and leave comments. And if we pick at your question, we'll shout you out.
All right, so besides leaving comments, though, you need to also tell your friends to like and subscribe too, right? And your family and your coworkers and whoever it is that you're actually like hanging out in the cooling station with, you should tell them about it too.
And good night, everybody.